Iburu, Iboya, Ibuche, everybody in Cyberlands, your favorite Bawalao, at least I hope so. Omodun, Odileke coming at you with another great video slash podcast. Hey, so I thought this was gonna be something that, for Inspirational Sunday. Again, I know I've been lacking and I've been kind of off schedule a little bit, making sure I do my weekly post, both on podcasts, both on YouTube, but I had a lot of consecrations and a lot of ceremonies that we were doing. And again, if you need to get in contact with me, all my information is in the details, the description bar below. Just scroll it out, right? Definitely everything is there for you if you need something. But nonetheless, back to topic. Hey, as always, give me the like, give me the subscribe, give me the share. Let's get after it. But I thought this was super important that I'm going to actually release this particular, both the video and the voice clip on podcast. I'm actually going to make that podcast available to everybody because it was something that kind of struck me. Something that for me, I became a little bit more concerned with, with I guess a little bit more, I guess, bothered. And I don't get bothered easy, but I'm a little bit more concerned nowadays because I see that there's an uptick, right, for one reason or another. And what I want to talk about is, you notice in these pictures that I have here, right? So you notice this missionary guy right here, right? You notice that little book he's holding, right? That they call the Bible. And we kind of see that this guy is yelling, getting all types of irate, and you got this guy here, the Bawalao, right? Basically just looking at you like, why are you getting so mad? Why are you so angry? Right? And it kind of tells a story. Right? And I wanted to share this story with you because everybody understands that I have your Fair Bawalao Institute. I do classes, right? I teach. One of the very first courses that I developed and I started to teach was, how did we get here? Right? How did our faith, right? That is, multi-thousand years old, right? And when you start looking at it and you peel the onion back, migrated itself into the African region, specifically in the West. Then you have the slave trade, and then you had everything kind of fall out, right? And we kind of see that transition, right? And I thought the course was really good in depicting that. So I'm really proud of that course. But more importantly, it started to kind of go into some of those, hey, who were the true, I don't want to call them villains, I don't want to call them enemies, I don't want to name call, right? But it's hard not to, because there was a lot of forced conversions, right? There was a lot of fear-based religion practices, right? So to the point where Ifa, or the Orisha worship of things, right? And when I say Ifa, you understand that I'm talking about Orisha Egun worship, right? We understand that we're talking about the Yoruba cosmology of things, right? So when I say these things, right, I don't know, I find myself in this weird predicament that we've been cornered to a point where I have to address this. I have to say certain things in order to avoid, right, misconfusion. Because here's the thing, I don't think I need to defend my faith. I don't think I need to explain my faith. But my wife would tell you that I'll be the first one, right? The first one that, as I see that Jehovah Witness or that Abrahamic faith person trying to convert me in the corner with their little flyers, right? I sit there and I will have the conversation with them. And I will speak on the fallacies. I will speak on their perception of what their Bible is, or what their perception of their Quran is. And I am okay having that educated conversation. Not to be mean, not to be cruel, not to be, malicious, but to show them a different perspective. That's very important. So here's why I say this. So, I recently, my social media nowadays is merely, I don't even have a personal social media. I have everything is Ifa, right? Trying to communicate and speak to the community as best as possible. That is my goal since day one. So, so now all my social media is linked that way. So I saw a wonderful tribute to a Ochun, right? And the person had all these oranges peeled perfectly, five pointed stars, I mean, what a beautiful tribute to Ochun. I think they were in the river. The landscape looked like the river. She was pouring her honey. She was doing everything by protocol. She had her bell out and she's speaking to the Orisha of love, fertility, relationship, right? And I start to kind of wonder. I said, man, what a beautiful tribute. And then I look at the responses below and I saw someone that was trying to do a forced conversion, a fear based method in order to suppress another religious person. And I said, what is this? And it was someone talking about you're going to go to hell, you're worshiping idols, that's not God, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wow, the ignorance is real. I always known the ignorance was there. I come from the Northeast, a lot of Bible thumping, a lot of Jehovah Witnesses, a lot of Pentecostals, a lot of. We didn't have Islam too much heavy until we got into the Brooklyn side of the house, and then they started to grow. The Jewish community was always huge. The Orthodox Romans were always there. But anyway, long story short, there was a certain level of respect, even I believe, in the Northeast that was there. And this person was pretty rude. So then I started thinking about it, and I bring everything up to my wife, and I say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Because I'm the nice one. My wife is a little bit more on the stringent, a lot, very much traditional and cultural in the faith. She believes in protocols, and so I always want to hear, let me hear what the no kidding, what is that black and white thought process looks like, because I'm very much a gray type of guy. And so she agrees. She says, you know what? These are what they do. This is what they do. They convert and they try to convert and they try to push their agenda. And I said, but this is interesting, right? This is my story to my wife. This is interesting because if we look at just historics, right? For anybody who knows me, or if you haven't noticed yet, I like history. And everything I say has to have a reference. Everything I say has to relate to Odu Ifá. Ifá gives me the secrets of the universe. I became a Bawala so I could learn the secrets of the universe. So here I am, right? So, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. The problem with forced belief systems. Forced belief systems. So this is my way of, I don't want to call nobody out. Forced belief systems. If you don't do this, you're going to hell. If you don't do this, you're damned for eternity. If you don't do this, this will occur. If you do this, that, and the other, and you repent, everything is okay. And I sit back and I say, that's an interesting way to kind of approach this, right? So, if a belief system is truly benevolent, right? Then why must it oppose itself upon others? That's the question of the day. If your faith and your religion is so beautiful, right, and so powerful, right, and we talk about, the death on the cross by a prophet in order to wipe the sins, and you think this is all powerful, then why must you impose it upon others? Because it was written in a book. And then I ask myself, so can I edit the book to add anything I want in order to meet my agenda? And then my question is yes. And I can say this for all the faiths and all the religions, right? But it just kind of gives you a certain layer of understanding, a certain layer of fallacy or illusion, right? That we are feeding on people's emotions, right? We are feeding on people's fears in order to get a point across. And I think that's wrong. So for this gentleman over here, why are you so mad? Why are you so stuck on converting? What is your agenda? Are you good in your heart with God? Are you good with your expression of spirituality? Do you see this guy yelling and screaming at you because you're not converting to his faith? That's the difference. And then people wonder and they get mad and they say, ah, they're devil worshiping. Ah, they're terrible people. They're sacrificing animals. Oh my gosh. And I say to you, is there not a lot more that you have done to humanity right? To put you on a higher scale of brutality that you're upset because I want to sacrifice a chicken or a rooster. I want you to think about that. I want you to reflect on that for a little bit because I think these things need to be told. Why? And then I ask myself another question, right? I'm very theological to a certain point. So then I ask myself a lot of questions, and then I want to get back to some root causes. And I say, why do some religions employ the fear tactics? Such as the concept of hell, right? To Is this a way of controlling? And I say, damn. So not only are we controlling, and now we're trying to impose, and now we're trying to, create these scare tactics, and it drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. So here it is: the spiritual and the ethical implications, right, of coercing individuals into religious conversations. Right? I'm going to say this again because I think it's an important point. I want to discuss with you the spiritual and the ethical implications of coercing individuals into religious, not conversations, but to conversions, right? Because I don't want anyone to look at this video. I don't want anybody to look at this podcast. I don't want anybody to say this is just another one-sided story of things. And it's not one-sided. Am I biased? Absolutely. Everyone is biased. Right? But I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what are those implications. I also want to talk about why do we utilize fear-based tactics, the threat of hell. Is this a tool of suppression, or maybe those other major religions or faiths are maybe they're trying to communicate to us and they don't necessarily understand the metaphorics, right, of what is hell being written in a book that's been translated quite a bit, that's been kind of shared quite a bit. Maybe there's something more to it. I don't know, but I want to have that discussion as well. I also want to understand, you know, how the Ifá tradition stands apart, right? How does it stand apart? Because I think that conversation is important. Because by respecting our individual destiny, our ori, right, and ensuing, right, this fear-based manipulation, a person is able to follow their own ethical, their morals, and the legal laws of the land, right? Because that is where they're destined to go, right? So I think we need to touch on that. I think we need to touch on that. So let's dig a little deep. And I feel like this is gonna be a long conversation. So I apologize early because I think you guys really sparked, not you guys particularly, but I think I just been experiencing this a little bit more. And I think I think it's necessary to have these conversations. But anyway, we'll continue. All right. So we understand, right? The brutality of the forced conversions across the religions. Let's talk about that for a little bit, right? Because I thought this was a very interesting data point. So throughout history, various religions, right, have expanded their influence, right? Through what? Coercion, right? It's like mafia style. You're either gonna do things or you're not gonna do things, and if you don't do things the way tell you to do it, you're gonna go sleep with the fishes, right? So there was a coercion, right? There was warfare. It was psychological manipulation, right? The resulting death tolls, right? Just the resulting death tolls from the forced conversions, the religious wars, right? The persecutions. Man, these numbers are staggering, people. These numbers are staggering. This is what makes me chuckle. You get mad at me because I sacrifice a rooster or a hen. Hell, I'll sacrifice a goat and a bull if I have to, and a horse, and a dog if I have to. It doesn't matter, right? In the name of my religious practices, right? All within legal bounds, of course. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Christianity. Let's tackle them first, right? From the Crusades to the missionary coercions, right? So let's take back a little bit of a history lesson here. The Crusades. So we talk about 1095 to about what 1291. We understand that there was a series of religious wars that were sanctioned by the Latin Church, right? By the Pope, the bishops, etc., right? Leading to an estimated, hear this, estimated 1 to 9 million deaths. 1 to 9. All right, let's think about this for a little bit. There's towns that you guys live in right now that don't have 9 million people. There are states out there right now that don't have 9 million people. So think about it. If I had to wipe out your whole city or town in the name of the church, infidel, death. That's what the Crusades were. Then you go into something that's called the 30-Year Wars, right? 1618, right, to 1648. This is not me saying it. I'm merely just giving you facts so that you have something to guide yourself with. And if you want to fact check me, fact check me. Don't brutalize me in the comments, guys. If you want to say something to me that's articulate and we're going to be able to have a good conversation, I will even welcome a Zoom. I will welcome a Zoom, right? But don't beat me up, okay? Don't beat me up. Again, I respect all faiths and religions, but I just want to understand, why do we keep hanging our hats on the Abrahamic faiths, and the Abrahamic faiths continue to beat up, viewers, beat up our folks from the Yoruba traditions. They beat up, a lot of different communities. Why? Because I don't hail the same flag that you hail. Do I not believe God? I do not believe in God like you believe in God. Do I have to be exactly like you, look like you, smell like you, dress like you, so I can believe in God like you believe in God? Is that the narrative? Anyway, that's where I'm getting at. 30-Year War, right? 1618, 1648. Now we see this conflict in Central Europe, right, between the Protestants and the Catholic states, right, resulting in approximately 4.5 and 8 million deaths. This is a family feud. This is what I call the 30-Year War. It was a family feud. It was my cousins and my uncles and my aunts, and they all started fighting, and my mom and my dad are in the middle. This was an in feud, right? The Crusades, they were wiping everybody out, right? The 30-Year War, that's between the Protestants and the Catholics. They're all Abrahamics. They just believe slightly different versions of that magical book that they like to reference to all the time. And because you don't follow their perspective, they don't like you. I don't think that's fair. But nonetheless, 8 million additional deaths. What's our toll now? We're at 17 million people dead, right? And we haven't even passed 1,000 years yet. We haven't even started. We haven't passed 1,000 years. Think about it. Then we got the colonial Christianity and forced conversions, right? The forced conversions. This is where, a lot of us kind of fell into this bucket, and it's a little bit more relevant to us nowadays. Why? Because we understand that we have a lot of history. When we talk about the 3000 to 4000 BCE, we understand the Egypt. We understand that we have a lot of track records from way east, moving down west towards Africa, and then at a certain point, we understand that our base of um, the faith, right, ended up living in what's known today as Nigeria, and part of that West Nigerian region in Ile-Ife. We understand that became kind of a stomping ground as it began to migrate, because it was already migrating, right, from further east. But then this thing happened called the colonial Christianity and the forced conversion era, or we like to call it, right, the slave trade. So then we get into this. And in the regions, and such like in Africa and the Americas, right, the indigenous population, right, the Oyo Empire, we talk about in Nigeria. We talk about the native Indians and the indigenous folks that lived in Puerto Rico and the United States, right, in South America, Central America. And you start to look at what this massive wipe was doing, right? And they were often coerced into abandoning their traditions, their ancestral traditions, in favor of Christianity. Because again, you are a beast, you're an animal, you're an outsider, you're not civil unless you are following this book here and you are praying to the cross and all these other idols that they say not to pray to, which is very contradicting to me. But I'm not going to touch on that either. But if they didn't, then it involved violence, cultural suppression, systemic discrimination, right? And we had a lot of that going on, right? In the name of God. In the name of God. That always makes me laugh because I'm a man of God. I am 100% a man of God, and no one can ever take that away from me. Could care less about anyone's opinion. That's between me, right, and God, right? But I am a man of God. So anyway, then I start to reflect, and I say, well, Schubert, man, based on just this information, is there something we can reflect on? Maybe we can give the viewers, maybe we could give the viewers, you, each and every one of you, the listeners, right? Odu Ifá, because I told you I like to bring everything back. So in Ogunda Osa, Ogunda Osa. This is an Odu, right? This is an Odu that teaches us that imposing one's will upon others leads to mutual destruction. Ifa teaches us this early on. I just wish we had a chance to catch the Christians and the major religions before they started to kill, which my death toll is somewhere north of 20 million. I haven't even tallied up the slave trades. We were at 17 million, right? It was 9 million and 8 million, right? We were at 17 million. I started talking about the slave trade. I didn't give you a number there, but we are north of a lot of different numbers of people that died in the name of someone's cultural views, right? In Ogunda Osa, you can't do that. We understand that brings destruction. In Ogunda Osa, we understand that the king, right? There's a pataki that talks about the king that tried to compel his subjects into war, right? And ultimately leading to the downfall of the kingdom as a whole. Because when you try to start a war, whether through religious reasons, whether it's through prosperity, whether it's just stability, I want to be the king of the world, whatever this may be, you will always bring the downfall of your kingdom. Wars all come with a cost. And if you're willing to sacrifice people, right, then I would challenge you that what God are you truly serving? Right? And you got to be careful about that. You know, there's an old prayer, Iku Lopa Baba, which says that death comes to those who force their will onto others. There you go. All right, so I talked a little bit about the Christians. Now let's talk about Islam, right? I'm sure I'm gonna get the Islamic faith folks are a little bit more aggressive. I'm sure I'll probably get a good amount of commentaries here, or maybe they don't listen. Who knows? But when we talk about the conquest, right, that they drove in the name of the faith, right? We talk about the historic figures, right, that indicate the in, the invasions, right, that were led, right, by certain figures like Muhammad of Ghazni, right? I think it was Ghazni, right? Involved in forcing, right, the conversions of people and mass killings. Mm, okay, so we understand that that's to be facts, right? Not because I said so, because the Quran says the own book that's followed. Then we talk about certain issues, right, that have been reported about forced conversions of religious minorities to include the Hindus and the Christians. We talk about a lot of news reports and things that you see even today, whether it be on social media or whether it be what the state's imam, because within the Islam culture, we talk about the imams being the center spiritual focal point, right, of how that country will utilize the faith in order to better govern the people, which I think it's a beautiful thing, don't get me wrong. But we talk about some of those extremist interpretations of the religious texts, and the threat of external, damnation. We talk about a lot of this, the fear again. We talk about leading through fear. We talk about leading through coercions, and I think it's just wrong. So then I go back and I say, you know what? I need to look at Otura Meiji. Why? Because Otura Meiji for me is Odudua, Mafarafun Odudu all day, in his leadership when he started to go west, right? From Mecca and working his way west. And we talk about the Orisha Odudu. So Otura Meiji, Salam Alaikum, Alaikum Salam, Nangari Nyare, Ipamale, right? And then I think about the Islamic culture. And I say to myself, I say, okay, Otura Meiji is all about Islam. Otura Meiji, we understand that the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, and we give homage to the sun, Olorun, and we give homage to God, and we give homage to our prophets like Orumila. You know, Islam is a very beautiful faith that has a lot of resemblance. All right. But here's the thing. In Otura Meiji, it also warns us against blind obedience, about aggressive behavior. It tells us that, you know, the story of a warrior who, believing he fights for righteousness, ultimately begins, brings ruin, right, upon his own people, right? A person that fights for righteousness ultimately brings ruins upon his own people. Because there's a difference between what does a fight look like? What does it mean to be humble? You know, and we talk about the concepts of Ikafun. We talk about the 16 mandates of Ifa. We talk about how a religious person should carry himself or herself. And I think we have some problems there, right? I think we have some problems. Obatu fi yagun si okang nipa arai. A king who rules through war kills himself. So what is the culture trying to do? Huh? Huh? Now let's talk a little bit about the Hinduism and the Caste system, right? Which is basically religious justification for oppression, which I think is very interesting because I think all religions, or at least all the world religions that have some sort of narrative of a heaven and a hell and how do I best oppress and create these fear tactics, all have this form of system, right? But let's talk about our Hinduisms and our caste systems. And again, guys, I'm not picking on any religion because Ifa says, right, religious tolerance. But what I am trying to prove here is that, you know, if you live in a glass house, don't cast a stone. Does that make sense? Right? You can pick 100 different things that you may see that I am doing that goes against your faith, but yet you're gonna damn me. So do I not have the same right to come back and say, hey, let me educate you on your faith? How much do you know about your faith? Those are the things that we need to be able to kind of bring to the table so that way we can all sit on the table. I would love nothing more to sit in front of an imam, a pastor, a priest, um, you know, you name it, all the spiritual leaders, and we all have an educated conversation. We all try to find God together the best way possible, expressing ourselves. Not that we want to judge, but no, think about how beautiful that would be. That would be something I would vote for. That would be something that I would elect. That's a United Nations of God. Think about it. We have a United Nation now, but think about if I was to put all the spiritual leaders in one room. That is something that is necessary in my eyes. But anyway, so in this caste system, right? This caste system has been perpetuated, right, through a systemic discrimination for centuries, right? Basically saying that the lower castes, right, known as the Dialites, and I may be saying this wrong, but you know, Dalit, the lights. I want to say delights, but delights sounds like something pleasant. Anyway, the lights. Basically, historically, they face some form of, you know, of social ostracization, right? They've been ostracized, right? And limited access to spiritual and social mobilities, right? They haven't been able to, by law, to do certain things. By law, they say, hell nah, you the minority. You are the lower. We're going to discriminate you until you either convert or you do something different. That's crazy, right? Then you get into some of these religious, you know, riots and forced reconversions. In certain instances, right? And I read a an article that talked about something that happened in 2008, right? When it had to do with the uh, Khan Hamal, right? And I'm going to spell this because I don't want to say it wrong. Kandhamal, right? That happened in Odisha, India, right? There were reports of Christians that were being coerced to convert to Hinduism under the threat of violence. Either you do it or I'm going to start stomping on your head. You're no longer Christian, you are now Hindu. Do you understand? That was going on. That was a real thing, which I thought was very ironic because I said, man, Christians always have a hard time. We always have a hard time Christians because Christians were the loudest ones. They're the ones that were burning people at the stake. They were the ones doing crusades. They were the ones, doing 30-year wars. There's a lot of war and death, when it comes to Christians. When I started to think about the Islamic crusades and how they forced Christians, right? And then I started to think about, and when I read this article from 2008, I said, damn, even the Hindus were trying to convert the Christians to Hinduism through the threat. And I said, man, this is crazy. Which then it brought me back to Odu Ifá, Ikameji. Look at it, Ikameji, right? It speaks against the social oppression, right? It narrates, right, the tale of a ruler who, by treating his subject unjustly, ultimately lost his kingdom. Right? And you get to see that a lot of these kings and a lot of these Odus, and I bring up the story specifically with the king because it doesn't matter how high and mighty you think you are. It doesn't matter how much you feel like you wear your cross and you feel like you dress nice and you have the Bible and you read the Bible a couple of times and you want to preach and you want to convert people. Doesn't matter how high you are on the totem pole, God is always greater. And if you don't think that every one of these folks have lost their lives, have lost their kingdoms, and lost everything in the name of whether it's social oppression, coercion, violence, that why do we continue to repeat history? Now I'm going to talk about Ifa. I'm not going to just talk about everybody. I'm going to talk about Ifa. Right? So Ifa is this. Ifa respects free will and destiny. We got this concept called Ori, which is your personal destiny. Right? And Ifa, each individual possesses a unique destiny. Spiritual growth, right, is viewed as a personal journey. And coercion is anti theatrical to the process. There's no coercions. No, there's only betterment of you because you are a representation of God. God was the one who gave life to you through the sacred breath. God is the one who allowed Ori to come down and personify, right, within the womb of a woman to be born in the name of God. Your Ori lives inside you. That's your free will and destiny. Let's look at Oyekumeyi. You don't have to believe me, but this is an Odun that imposing beliefs on others. It cautions against it. It says you can't do that. That's like me being about Allah. Somebody comes to me for advice and I say, hey, the only way you're going to survive this is you got to pray to God. You got to receive your hand of Ifa. You got to become a Bawalao. You got to become a Olorisha. You got to get all that stuff and then boom. That's how you're going to survive. And if you don't, you're going to die. And if you don't, you know what I mean? And it's not about that. It's not about that. It's like, hey, you got free will, you got destiny. Your destiny, has a good road to this particular path. It might be priesthood, it might not. Hey, you have a good destiny. It can lead you here. You have free will. You don't have to take this road, but if you don't take this road, then maybe you should go do this because we're trying to keep your destiny flowing and keep the blessings going. You see how that becomes a different conversation instead of take your sacraments, baptize, do your first confirmation. Hey, if you don't, pray and give yourself to whoever, then you're damned. Not really. Because in Oyegumeyi, right, it recounts that a community that that adheres to rigid religious rules encounters misfortune. You have to have that flexibility to allow people's free will to flow. There's a prayer, and I'm bad at these Yoruba prayers. You know what I mean? The ones that my elders taught me, and the ones they drilled in my head, I got down pat. But it's sometimes looking at some of these newer prayers, and I don't ever want to butcher them. But basically, the prayer goes that the herd that goes to war without knowing the end will be swallowed by war. Merely just trying to remind us that misfortune is always there. Chaos will always be there. Once we go into that chaos, how do we get out? And we got to be careful about those things. Here's the other thing about Ifa. Ifa does not threaten with hell. There's no fear versus destiny. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that, right? So while some religious factions utilize the concept of hell as a deterrent, right? Ifa focuses on achieving right balance and understanding consequences within one's current life rather than fearing an internal eternal punishment. Man, that's rough. And I look at Ifa and I say, well, damn, Iobe. Iobe is an Odun that wisdom and patience leads to success. Iobe tells me, or tells of Orumila, who avoids war and triumph right through intelligence, not brutality. And there's a lot of Oduns that talk about this. The pen is mightier than the sword. We have a lot of different verses of things. And we just, it's just another way of showing that Ifa is beautiful. Ifa is great. Ifa is not trying to do anything crazy. So then I gotta go and I gotta focus through something a little further. I say Ifa focuses on alignment, not fear. Because remember, I was telling you, people were using fear. So if Ifa adheres to rituals and worship, right? And it's not driven by fear, but by desire to align one's destiny. Deviating from one's path leads to imbalance, not eternal damnation. Eternal damnation is the fear tactic. If I tell you imbalance and you're still trying to align yourself, you still have an ability to align yourself always, because if I will give you the solutions to your problems, it will begin to show you that here's where your alignment and your misalignment is. Here, let's do this to align you. And hey, go be beautiful. Go have a beautiful life. You can even be a pastor, an imam. You could be in any other religious faith because Ifa is religious tolerant. It doesn't care. It just wants to see that your destiny through God's eyes is being met and that you're following the path of righteousness the proper way without having to backstab, kill, coerce, or socially oppress. That's where I'm at right now. That's where my head is. So then people say, all right. So if deviating from one's path leads to imbalance, not eternal damnation, what tells you this, Babalao? Great question. If you look at the Odun of Oche Uri, this is an Odun that describes, a sage who learns, you know, that imposing beliefs results into destruction, right? Then, then, then why would we impose? Oche Uri, the sage who learns that no matter how powerful he is, right? And take this in a metaphorical sense, right? Not necessarily a literal sense. A sage who is all powerful learns that imposing beliefs results in destruction. Would tell you that if you are so great and our leaders are so great and these religious factions are so great and these world religious views are so great and you got people with the Bible and talking about the Holy Spirit so great, why do they feel they have to bring that level of destruction to society? For what? Because God came down and they saw God and they talked to God. And God said, I want you to kill millions of people. I want you to socially oppress them. And to those who don't follow those rules, I want you to use violence against them. Is that the God that you're saying told you to do that? I don't think so. Hmm? I don't know. So then what are we saying? We're saying that instilling fear of eternal punishment can render individuals more susceptible to control. Am I not? So if I send you to church and say you're going to go to hell if you don't follow these rules, and then now you're scared and you want to follow the rules because you don't want to go to hell, you want to be an eternal, living in heaven and all the cupids and all the angels and all those beautiful things, right? Um, fear can suppress critical thinking. It can promote unquestioning obedience. Right? It doesn't allow you to evolve. It doesn't allow you to bring the evolution of life, right? Because that's the key, is the evolution of life. So, if you're not going to evolve to create under God's vision, making this world heaven on earth, basically, right? How do we do that if we can't evolve? Because you won't allow your followers to evolve. And I start looking at the Ifá perspectives on spiritual freedoms, right? Ifá, Ifá lacks centralized religious authorities enforcing uniformity, right? And I used to hate this. I was a big person that I needed something that was centralized. I remember once that I joined the National African Religious Conference, right? And I was all about it because I said, you know what? I want to be labeled. I want to be registered. I want to be legit. I want to be able to have and conform under certain rules in a box. And I did that for about a year or two, and I said, I ain't doing this crap no more. Here's why I called it crap, and I apologize. I don't mean crap, but here's why I didn't do it. Because I think what makes Ifa beautiful is that the tradition honors Olodumare, God, right? A benevolent force, and views Orishas as guides, not enforcers, right? And when we look at Oduns like Okana Meiji, we understand that it's not about centralizing and uniforming a faith. It's about being able to find yourself. And I think all the world religions do this, right? You go to a church because you like your pastor. You go to a church because you like your priest. You go to a church. You already have the concept of your spirituality that aligns with this church, this temple, whatever. It's just the person now that you want to preach to you or teach you or become your spiritual advisor. That's now what you're truly looking for. So then I say, well, then this concepts of all these spiritual iles. I got a lot of Babalao friends that have their own personal spiritual iles, right? They have their own God kids, they're doing their own thing, a Buddha boy, right? I have a lot of Olorisha friends, a lot of Oba Oriates. They have their own Orisha houses, Buddha boy, right? And you begin to kind of see that we don't necessarily need the uniformity because we all follow the same text. Ifa is Ifa, 256 Oduns. Those things are broken down and created another oracle system of Mire de Legun. We understand that Ifa mentions the Eguns and our ancestors and how to communicate through them, whether it be through Palo Moyumbe, whether it be through Ateja de Egun, whether it be through Egungun society, whether it be through, um, the you name it. A lot of different societies, one way, shape, or form. But if I becomes that umbrella and we understand, here are the rules, here's where we go, foundationally, we're all moving in the same place. We may kind of change some things around based on our personal free will and destiny, right? Because maybe we got to do things slightly different based on how we need to lead a home, right? I don't know. So what kind of made teaches that? It says, hey, look, this is an Odun that narrates to us that individuals threatened by a false prophet, you know, they have to be able to choose wisdom over fear. Only then will they truly prosper. Wisdom over fear. But anyway, so, I think I leave you all with this. I think I've been talking now for over 40 minutes. I think you guys are probably a little bit, tired on the topic right now, but I would love to hear your feedback. For those of you who are catching me on the podcast, please leave me some fan mail. Give me some thoughts. Give me some ideas. What does that next, episode need to look like, right? This one I made public, but a lot of my episodes are private for season 2. This one will be the only one that's going to be public. So give me some thoughts, give me some ideas. You want to join and subscribe? Definitely go to Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout, it's on there. It's on my description page. For those of you on YouTube land, you know I love hearing from you. Shoot me an email. Say, hey, Baba or Lou, I got an idea for a great video. I'm all in. Until then, I'm gonna keep pushing through these Meijis. I think I still have my last part of the Oyekume series that I gotta do, and then I'm gonna push right into the next one. We're gonna go into Iwuri, Odi, Iroso, Mowani, and we're gonna just keep pushing through, right? And then in between, I'm gonna do things like this to kind of break the animosity up a little bit, right? So hey, as always, give me the like, give me the share, give me the subscribe. Much love to each and every one of you. Iburu boy Abu Cheche, your favorite Babalao, coming at you, right? With another great video, but also have a great weekend. Iburu, Iboya, Ibu Cheche.